Hey, Brian Manning here. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the Garden Report. Checking in with you here to talk a little more Celtics offseason. Finals getting started tomorrow as well. So we're going to welcome in Josue Pavon again from Oklahoma City. See how the media day went today. See what he's thinking about that series as it gets started. But first, we got Brian Robb from Mass Live. B-Rob's here checking in. Good friend of the network and a great Celtics reporter who's been covering a lot of this offseason stuff starting to take shape here, B-Rob. And, I've gone through a lot of this stuff too, trying to figure out how it's all going to come together here. And I do want to focus on Kristaps Porzingis today specifically, given that you wrote about him a couple of days ago. But as you're just starting to, go through all these different possibilities, hearing things, just getting a bigger picture of what's going to happen here. Where are you at on this thing? Is it a full tear down? Is it going to be bits and pieces coming off? Like, what's this thing going to look like, you feel like?
Well, I want to credit you, Bobby, too. We've been burning the midnight oil at the trade machines over the last 2 weeks here. So that's I imagine that is just going to continue at this point as we go through these next few weeks here. And yeah, it's a fascinating spot, and it would have been fascinating regardless with even before Tatum went down. But now that he is out for, I imagine, a very large chunk of next season, it opens the door to some, potentially painful changes in terms of how big of a step back this team wants to take next year financially, strategically, to kind of circle back and be, all guns blazing for 2 years from now. So it's as we look at it, we know that meetings are being had. I'm sure options are being explored kind of across the board in terms of whether you want to go the more conservative route of just getting under the second apron and kind of seeing how things go during the year and then maybe make a decision from there, or going the more, the bigger route of being like, all right, let's maybe get under the tax now and start that process now because the team's going to be in the repeater tax for the foreseeable future until they get under it for a couple of years. And so it's hard, in my mind, it's kind of hard to make the case to be like, all right, why would you pay the tax this year if, unless you're hearing really good things about Tatum's recovery and, think that it's realistic that he could be a factor in the playoffs. Like, why this seems to be an excuse to be like, all right, start that process now and then kind of go from there. So in my mind, that certainly opens the door to that option even more. But it's kind of, as we've tried to cover it for these trade scenarios, Bobby, it's not the easiest thing to pull off to do it in a way that, makes sense for even the long term.
Yeah, and they don't have a lot of control, I don't think. Like, a lot of it's going to be who wants some of their guys, what opportunities emerge for bigger trades. And that's, in the past, I feel like when we were building these trades, you'd avoid the 3-4 crazy team deals because that stuff just doesn't happen. Now I actually feel like that's how a lot of this stuff is going to happen. Stuff just going in different directions. We saw it at the trade deadline too. Jimmy Butler, all these other trades became like 5-team deals just to make the money work.
Can be a lot of
so
that.
I think, so I think a lot of this stuff's hard to even imagine. I know we've tried to do it here. It's probably going to be stuff that we're not even thinking about right now. But I wonder when it's going to happen because I think people are underrating a little bit the fact that this could go into the season, that they don't have to get below the tax until the trade deadline. If they want to avoid it, then they don't have to get below the second apron with those penalties until the end of the year. So they don't have to rush this thing, and they shouldn't, because I don't feel like they're in a great position negotiating wise with a lot of the guys that they could potentially want to part with here. And we've kicked around Drew Holiday. He's on a massive deal. Porzingis, who we'll talk about here, is in a weird spot coming off that rough finish to the season with the illness and all that. So there's a lot of stuff with him that's going to make his value around the league uncertain, I'm sure. And then, for other guys like Sam Hauser and, potentially other guys lower on the roster that they can move here, it probably won't be that challenging, but those aren't salaries that are going to move them in a massive direction toward the financial goals that they want to accomplish here. So this stuff's going to happen in steps. This stuff's going to happen over a longer period of time, I think, than, people realize right now. But I do wonder because a lot of stuff, the opportunities happen during the off season. It's tougher to make these moves. It's tougher to reposition yourself in a significant way financially in season. So something big, I'd have to imagine. At least one big thing's going to happen this summer, I'd imagine. And as you sit here right now, what are you predicting it will be?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would be stunned if one of Porzingis or Drew Holiday are still on the team as of like mid-July. Um, just based on like you said, I think it's a good point. Like they don't have to do all their work now, but as far as leverage goes, you don't want to leave too much to during the season either. Like because at that point, your options kind of can dry up in terms of where are some landing spots here. If you're moving big salary players like a Drew Holiday or Porzingis, um, those teams like to have those type of guys in place when the season starts, especially if you're like obviously big names can be on the move for star players, but like when you're dealing with contracts of that size and the limited cap space and just options teams have, like it would be a little bit risky for the Celtics to go down that path. You could do that if you want to do that for Sam Hauser type, sure. Like if you want to stay 10 million above the tax and then make a decision during the season, being like, all right, we know we have a landing spot for Sam. We know that Team X wants him and they'll take him at some point with their mid level or whatever. Like that could be in play. But anything bigger than that, it would surprise me. So a lot of this comes probably, I feel like, what's the mandate from ownership right now? Like
Yep.
I know we're going to hear that it's all going to be basketball focused in terms of the strategy. And part of that will be true, but without a doubt, like different doors are going to open here being like, are they okay being in the repeater tax for a while? Does that need to come down at some point in the next 3 or 4 years, at which point, like, why not do it now? But if the spending is okay to be, it's obviously not going to be $500 million
Yep.
or whatever, but is it okay to have be $300 million when you include the tax? Like if that's a yes, then that makes Brad Stevens and his front office life a lot easier. If it's not, then that's when things get a little bit dicey on that front.
So you reported the holiday stuff, so I want to touch on it quick. The Clippers' interest potentially here. Mavericks have been floated as well. There'll be some interest here, despite the money, despite him being older. The trades are difficult to pull off, and that's what I wanted to get into a little bit before we get to some of the Porzingis stuff. Here is, you know, the likelihood of a Clippers trade coming together and what it would look like. Is this something that would be helpful to the Celtics, or do they just have to take what they can get if an opportunity like this arises?
Yeah, I'm fascinated what his market is inevitably going to be because he's still a very valuable player, as we've saw last postseason and points this year. But that's a big contract. And I know
Yeah.
you've been on this too. It's like, and when teams are planning out 2 or 3 years, it's like that. You're not expecting Drew Holiday at 37 to be a world beater. Like, yeah, could he be like the 5th best player on a title team? Like potentially, like he can hold up like Al Horford holds up, but that's still a lot of money to be paying Drew Holiday. So, yeah, I mean, with the Clippers, I think they're in a spot now where they can likely go 2 paths this offseason. Of like, do they think they can make a legitimate run at it again for next season? Like, bring in another big name or two around Harden, Kawhi, and like do one last gas with that core, if you will. And if that's the case, then I might like Drew Holiday is probably going to be something to look at because he's not going to cost a ton. He's going to cost, I think, essentially expiring contracts, depending on what his market is. Maybe I don't expect the Celtics to get a draft pick out of him, like in this deal. Ultimately, like I think it's going to be them getting off the long term money is what they're going to get out of it. I mean, unless they have multiple bidders in play, and then they can kind of pit teams against each other. But how much that happens in terms of how much those teams are willing to give up remains to be seen.
Yeah, and I think the players coming back in this trade is pretty straightforward.
Right.
Bogdanovich is the big money that they have that they can move. That's effectively a 1-year deal. It's a lot of 1-year deals there in LA, as you mentioned. So it is pretty enticing, like the way the money would work in this trade. And these are decent players coming back. Like Bogdanovich can play. Maybe one of these younger guys breaks through, like a Cam Christie or something, who's just making the tail end of the money work here. The
Right. That's
question I have
flexibility.
is whether it'd be a Derek Jones who's on a 2-year deal, and I'm sure that they probably love after the year he had. or Chris Dunn, who is effectively on a 1-year deal, who they also loved last year as well, and was
Yeah.
probably doing some Holiday things defensively, but isn't much of an offensive player. I mean, that to me, among all the stuff, the big benefits to this trade for the Celtics for me would be if they don't have to give up draft capital and a guy like Chris Dunn or Derek Jones comes back, because those guys can at least play for you next year.
Yeah, totally. If they can get you, that'd be a no brainer for me for this other guy. I honestly would be a little surprised if the Clippers are willing to include those guys for the reasons you mentioned. Like those are important parts of that team next year. They're on contracts that aren't going to cost a ton. Like, and you need, fill your bench. And so, yeah, maybe like obviously Chris Dunn, if you get Drew Holiday in there, like maybe that's a little bit redundant. But I would, in terms of like Holiday's contract, if I was the Clippers, I'd be like, we're not giving you Chris Dunn too. Like we need, like we're taking back this, what could be a tough contract for you. Like we're not going to give you too much sweetener here. So I would be surprised if that's the market that is out there for Drew Holiday. That's fantastic news for the Celtics. I'm not sure it's that high, but at the same time, I was like a couple years ago, the Celtics got Porzingis and a couple first-round picks for Marcus Smart.
Smart, yeah.
Like Brad Stevens has a track record of maximizing returns for some of these guys when they're there. And so if an offer like that, I mean, obviously Drew Holiday is not going to command that, but if the Celtics get solid value for that deal, then that's a huge win for the Celtics.
Yeah, tricky thing here, it would fill the Celtics roster, so they'd have to probably try to move off one or two of these guys if they're going to keep their free agents potentially. And this probably makes the Clippers a tax team, which I don't know if they want to be or not. I mean, they might.
Right. It's like, do they want to go? That's the question of like, what is ownership's priority there? Like, do they want to go for it now again? Like, we know Ballmer's got the money, or are they more intent of being like, all right, we want to dip under the tax again, get out of the repeater tax, and then reset more for a couple years, down the line.
It's interesting, given Kawhi's point in his career, you don't think he has a ton of time left here, and they were pretty good last year. So maybe try to maximize that if you're them. I think that's an interesting scenario that you laid out there. With the reporting that they could be interested there. Mavericks interesting too. You got Washington, you got Gafford, but I really want to talk about Porzingis here because you wrote about him this week. I think he's probably the most interesting player among all of them. I believe there was another report today as well that he's expected to be the most likely guy that they look at moving here, and I think that makes some sense given he's on a 1-year deal, bit of a luxury given that he doesn't play a ton. There's an injury risk there as well as always, and it just didn't end great this year. And that's the most complicated part of it is if he did what he did all season for you last year, you're probably in a much different place in terms of your postseason finish. You're probably viewing him as some level of part of your future. Horford's up there. Cornette's a little older too. Cada didn't really pan out after a strong start. So you don't have a ton at center, and he's still relatively young, still even at 30 million, relatively cost controlled. And, you could get into some bargaining after next season. So even now, the way I look at it, and I wrote this today, if they're willing to pay a little bit of tax to keep this thing together as much as they can, and maybe just move off a piece or two to dodge the second apron, I don't mind at least starting the year with Porzingis. Because I think that, a 1-year deal is easier to move in season, I'd say. Especially if you're bringing back some small or maybe long-term money back in a trade like that. You looked at a lot of trades that could happen here. I looked at some too. I didn't love them, and that's another reason I.
There's be a lot of that this year. It's gonna be, you look at a lot of these Drew and Porzingis trades. You're like,
yeah, I get it from the fan standpoint. They're like, what the hell? Why would they do any of this stuff? But that's just the reality right now is these are moves to save money. Are they moves to actually make your team better? You're not going to be a better team next year without Holiday. You're not going to be a better team next year without Porzingis necessarily, especially if you lose another center beyond that. So there's a couple of reasons I say bring him back. I mentioned the first one. The second one, Jaylen Brown and him play so well together, and I feel like Jaylen almost needs an outlet like that to move into this new role he's about to start. And then 3 is that long-term center situation you're in. Like, could you sign him to an extension where he's only making 15, 20 million after this year? Could you take him to free agency after this season and try to bring him back on a deal that works for both sides? There's a lot of flexibility they have with him that makes me say, just bring him back, see if he can reestablish himself. I don't have any information about the health, and I'm sure he's still, there's a picture of him smoking the hookah and, out on vacation for a couple of days ago, but, no real updates on his health. So I think that's another question on top of all the stuff we're talking about here. What do you make of his future in Boston?
Yeah, I think you make good points in terms of, you have to, for me, it starts with the long-term question of him that you brought up, is like, could he be here on a deal that is the Celtics are happy with beyond next season? And those are conversations that can be had internally and can probably be had with Porzingis' reps. I'm not sure. I imagine he's eligible for an extension. I'd have to check.
I believe he is. Yeah.
So yeah, like, what is his market there? Like, what is he? I would not be wanting to get in the Porzingis business at $30 million again for the long term.
No.
If that comes down to 15 to 20 million, then yeah, we can talk. Like, he's, like I said, he's still in his prime. The injury stuff is what it is, but we've seen what he can look like. Like, again, before the second half of this season, offensively, before that virus stuff came around, like, that was some of the best offensive basketball of his career, I felt like. So when you combine that with just what could be a very, somewhat chilly market, just coming off of what happened from the playoffs right now, if that's the situation, then yeah, like, getting off of Drew right now is probably a bigger priority than moving Porzingis, because it is easier to move Porzingis in season, move a contract like that in season, because it isn't expiring. With that said, if the Celtics don't think he's going to be able to be the long-term center here, then I think it's probably an easier choice. It's like, all right, like, this is $30 million. He was a luxury to have the last couple of years. He gave us what he had when he had it, but long term, I don't think you can expect the durability to get any better as you get into his 30s. You may not have Al Horford around here too, to like kind of be that security blanket behind him in the future. So when he goes out on when he's not playing back-to-backs and things like that, that leaves a pretty massive hole in your lineup, and you're not.
You can only count on him for 50 games max. Right. It feels like.
Exactly. So is that the type of guy you want to be building up in your 30s? When you have, and the problem is if you're going to keep Tatum, Brown, Derek White, then your payroll long-term is that's pretty tight when you're building around supermax guys. And so I'm not sure you can afford to even have a guy playing, 50 games a season, even if he's making $20 million a year. So in my mind, I lean towards he's going to get moved at some point, but like you said, whether it'll be now, whether it'll be during the season, let him come back, kind of showcase himself, maybe build a market for himself in season. I think that could be very much in play as well.
So let's get into the trade machine. You wrote a couple. I had a couple in mind here. Detroit's interesting, so we'll start with them.
Yeah.
They have Harris on expiring. He was pretty good for them last year. He's a stopgap wing too. I actually feel like when you look around the league at some of the guys who could actually come back and play for the Celtics for a year and then be, expiring money, or a guy who comes back potentially after that, Harris actually interests me a lot, given that you're not going to have Tatum for a lot of next year. So I think that is enticing. Now, do they want Porzingis? I think it comes down to how much they like Duren and Stewart. And I think they like both of those guys a lot. Stewart, to me, that's been a fan favorite name for a long time. I feel like there's been a lot of reporting over the years too that the Celtics have had some interest in him.
A couple years ago, that came up once or twice, I feel like, out of Detroit, maybe.
Yeah. So your trade with Detroit was Stewart, Fontecchio, and Bobby Clinton coming over.
Right.
Is that something you see as feasible from a Detroit side of things?
Again, it all comes down to I think we've heard reports that the Pistons want a stretch big this offseason, and they're I think now.
Yeah, because Stewart shoots threes, but he's not great at it.
He's not a pure He's not great at it. He's certainly not a high volume three guy like Porzingis is. Not a pure shooter. He can do it. But yeah, that is Porzingis. If that is an option, Porzingis is a realistic option on that front. Do they value? Is beef stew to them? Is he just an important piece?
He's on a great contract.
He's on a great contract.
Yeah.
Under team control 2 years. It's a backup center for them. He's not starting. But he's still, he's young, in his prime, rebounds the hell out of the ball, great defender. And so, yeah, that's a pretty big change to your makeup. So it's how big do they want to, kind of open the door offensively for themselves. We're like, do we need another stretch big like Porzingis to maximize Cade, to like maximize what we can be? And we have enough great defenders to put around Porzingis where it's like that will work too. I lean probably no on Pistons being okay with a deal like this. I think they, unless they have some deal, unless they like the price they can get Porzingis at long term, I wouldn't expect them to get off of B2. But the money works there, and it is a intriguing change of pace in terms of how aggressive Detroit wants to be building with their offense.
So I got a little crazier here with Detroit. You can always pull in the Nets as a salary team. And
nice
actually, Porzingis could go outright to the Nets. I just don't
Sure.
think that makes a ton of sense because you're probably trading a ton of draft compensation to make them eat $30 million outright. So I wouldn't count on that. My Porzingis trade with the Nets looped in to Detroit here. Like I mentioned, Harris coming back to Boston as an expiring salary. Holiday going to Detroit as well. So you get off both of those guys in one swoop here, keep them together, Pistons get some help in the front court and back court. Clinton, Fontecchio, some of that matching salary from Detroit goes over the Nets. Nothing crazy. Clinton's a couple of years, probably some non-guarantees and stuff, but Fontecchio is expiring. And Stewart and Harris back to Boston. And I think that should work. Let me see if there's anything else that needs to go out here. Oh, and since the Celtics get under the second apron, they can move Hauser over to Brooklyn as well. So this actually addresses a lot here in one move to me. And if you're getting Porzingis, if you're Detroit, that's one thing. If you're getting Porzingis and Holiday, I think that's a little more enticing for Detroit. Now, they have to sign Beasley, right? And that's going to hard cap them at the first apron. So there's a lot of stuff floating around with them there. So I don't know how super feasible this was, but I cooked this one up as an idea.
Right. It's like the Pistons, there are teams that are, you can tell yourself being like, all right, Drew Holiday, that's a winner. And that's someone we can trust in the playoff basketball and is an upgrade over a Beasley.
And if you have to give up a pick here, if you're Boston,
yeah, I think
you're getting Story. You're getting Story,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Like if this was ever on the table for the Celtics, you'd take this in a heartbeat. And I personally, I would put in some draft capital for the Celtics to get a deal like that because you'd get
saving $30 million.
You're saving $30 million. You get your a real center for the future in Stewart. You get Harris on expiring, and then you'd have options with him going forward. So yeah, it all comes down to like, are there enough teams like the Pistons out there, like the Maverick, like teams that want to make the push for next season and beyond and think like, okay, we don't have to give up much to get a Drew Holiday beyond taking like the contract. Like all it takes is one team to talk themselves into it like that, whether that'll be the Pistons, whether they're at that level, whether they, Holiday obviously is a far different age than the rest of that core. Like they might talk themselves out of it for stuff like that, but they're certainly a team that will have those conversations because, they showed up quite well against the Knicks in the playoffs and are obviously on the rise.
Yes. So I'm looking for why can't I find the Jazz here? Are they down here? Oh, they're like under this little ad, right? Yeah,
they might be
17 and 65. So Jazz team that had interest in Porzingis last time around.
Yep.
I find them
Andrew Holiday, from what I heard too.
Really? Okay. Makes sense, right? Danny's out there. I'm sure
Danny's out there.
So, right. And now Austin Ainge is out there as well, as of a couple of days ago. So interesting trade partners here. Maybe there's some more momentum because of something like that. I don't know. It's been 2 years for Porzingis. So I know you had one here. I actually just kept it very simple. Like, would the Celtics take John Collins off Utah's hands, save $5 million, $4 or $5 million, and does Utah take Porzingis off? It's actually not an insane trade. The Celtics get a little more athletic. Jazz had some shooting. You're losing a lot of shooting there at that 4 and size if you're Boston, and he can play a little bit of 5, but Collins has gone in the wrong direction over the last couple of years here. But it is a guy that they've liked in the past and does add a little burst, athleticism, some stuff that they need, I feel like.
Totally. I think, again, you look at Utah is fascinating because of guys like Collins, Clarkson, Colin Sexton. That's a team. If like Austin Ainge, listening to his introductory press conference out there in Utah, like it sounds
they're not tanking.
They're not tanking, and they have a ton of long-term payroll flexibility. So bring in either of those guys, and like you said, they just might want to change the scenery for Collins, change to Sexton, Clarkson, any of those guys, to bring in more proven winners. Like that's a team that the Celtics, I'm sure Brad and Austin are probably talking already or about stuff like this.
And yours was Clarkson, Martin,
Right. But
Fee,
the
just some
same,
money
just
that's easy to get
right,
off.
just more savings there. But yeah, like the same return. Like obviously Collins would make much more sense for you can just slide him into Tatum's spot this year.
Because
And
you
that could
need something at center if you're getting off Porzingis. Even if
right.
Horford comes back, even if Luke Steins, you need something you can
Yeah,
carry into the future.
exactly. And so how competitive are you? If you're planning on being trying to be real competitive next year, then Collins makes much more sense for that spot because you're going to need an innings eater there. And obviously Collins has his flaws, but that's a guy that can play and brings a certain, is certainly dynamic on the offensive end.
All right, I want to check 2 more before we get you out of here, B-Rob. You threw this one out there, of course, because why not? Rob Williams coming back with Matisse Thybulle. This one's interesting to me. Actually, I think Portland would probably like this more than Boston, just because I don't know what you do with Rob and Thybulle at this point. It's just expiring money, I guess, but you don't
Yeah.
even know if those guys are going to play for you or play for anyone else after this year. So
What's
I'd probably
Thybulle's
want.
injury? He had I know he missed most of last year. Is he supposed to be back? I didn't even really look to see what's going on with him, but
I haven't either. I just know he didn't play a lot last year.
right.
So yeah, I mean, he's been going in the wrong direction. Rob, ankle. He was dealing with a lot of
Ankle
ankle
injury, yeah.
stuff and knee. It looks like a little bit too. So yeah, I mean, these aren't guys I think you're going to be able to reliably flip for much of anything, and might even have trouble flipping after this. Because again, these deals might lead to you moving off one of the other guys who's coming back later, stuff like that, to
Right.
actually save some money here. This deal is only saving you $5. I mean, $5,
Yeah,
$5 million bucks right away.
right.
So I don't know.
Again,
Everyone loves
could
the
they one
Rob
of them
name.
rebuild some value during the season though, Bobby, you feel like? Maybe you if they
Maybe.
come back.
I mean, Rob just hasn't even been able to step foot on the floor
This is
for
true.
2 years now. So I love the name. A lot of people are gonna love that idea, but I can't do it now. But at Portland, though, I think would love because they're starting to pivot toward winning
Right.
pretty definitively here to bring a guy like Porzingis who they have some flexibility with and who actually could pack a punch in that front court alongside Ayton. So, I mean, this is one you could pull off if you wanted to. Again, though, I think I'd rather just bring Porzingis back than do something like this.
Yeah, it's certainly from a basketball next year standpoint, not an impressive deal for the Celtics. If it's 2 years, again, if your priority is just like we need to start trimming away the money, this gets you $6 million down. It's easier to trade those guys in separate deals than to move $30 million in the season. So you
Can I do my version of that deal?
Please.
How about Marcus Smart coming
right?
back?
I mean,
I bet you looked at that one.
Oh yeah. An expiring
throwing another minimum guy there. Champagny was already here, and boom, you save $7 million. Maybe you move on from Smart. Maybe you bring him back to actually play. Oh, I would think about this one. I don't know. They probably wouldn't.
Right. It's like, I mean, KP did love it in Washington.
I think that would be doing him a solid here.
That would be, yeah. If you're saying to a spot, be like, all right, you can play 50 games there, rebuild some value, and then hit the open market next year. Washington, I imagine, is not their next year. They're going to be a place to put bad contracts this offseason to get deals like this. But yeah, I would honestly think I am curious if the Wizards would actually even do this because, do they think that Smart has more of a market or Porzingis has more of a market? Like, if they kind of flip those guys again during the season, I don't know.
Porzingis probably has a little more of one. I mean, Smart, again, another guy who struggled to just get on the court the last 2 years here. So, this one's fun. We'd love to have him back. Fans would love to have him back. Some fans, but probably not.
You need a distraction like this during a tough season that's upcoming.
Right. I mean, it'd create some buzz. Yeah.
Right.
And it's expiring contract. So, you move on or maybe keep him after that year for cheap. I think a lot of it would come down to how much Smart's ready to take a real step back now, play a much smaller role. So I won't rule it out. Lakers, you can do. I mean, you threw it out there, just some contracts coming back. Is Vincent? Yeah, he's on the 1 year now. Kleber's on a 1 year. And Shake Milton's probably expiring as well. So, I mean, that gets it done, gets you some savings. Lakers, ooh, do we need another contract in there?
Yeah, I'm not the money should work here, but maybe this is
I think $5 million. We need a little more, it looks like. So I don't know. He's throwing something else there.
But I wonder if for that would I mean, Luka KP didn't go great the first time around. I wonder
It's a great
if that's
point.
ruled out. If that's ruled out just for that. That's obviously Luka would, I imagine, get the be able to give the stamp of approval on his center of the future here. But obviously the Lakers need, like, this is, if they're looking at center options, then Porzingis may very well be the best center available via trade this offseason if he plays to his potential.
Any way they move off Rui in a deal like this?
I can't see it for Porzingis unless the Celtics are throwing out some serious draft capital, because he's come on strong and he's still, what is he? He's in mid 20s
Reddick
right
loved
now.
him, 27.
Right?
He's on a 1-year deal, so
yeah, they're gonna have to pay him, but I think he's just a more reliable guy than KP at this point. So I would certainly, if I'm the Lakers, I'd be asking for more.
They have some other ways to get this deal done. I think mine had a couple people going to Charlotte. Rui coming back. That's the only way it would interest the Celtics for me. Maybe send off Kleber and some of those other guys to a third team here. Mine looks something like this. A couple guys going back to LA. So maybe that entices them a little more, being able to get a Diabate. Actually some real depth in the front court there. These guys should be going to the Lakers. And I think that works. Yeah. I don't know. Not the best trade for everybody. So capital would have to go to the Hornets. I'm guessing no on this one too. So, I mean, that brings me to where I started this thing. I think Porzingis is back next year, but we will see. Appreciate B-Rob stopping by, talking some off-season stuff. He does a great job over on Mass Live with a lot of this, and has had some reporting on all this summer as well. So go check out his work over there. And appreciate you stopping by, B-Rob. Have a good rest of your week.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me, man. Keep up the good work yourself.
All right. Now we lost our guy Josue here. Should be stopping by in just a minute, so we'll wait for him to get back in the room. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on some of these trades, and we can go through some more of them if you'd like in the meantime here while we wait for Josue. First off, we should do a read. Why not? We are powered by Prize Picks, and the championship round is starting up now. It starts tomorrow. So tomorrow, the next best chance to go over to Prize Picks, and we're going to preview this series right now that's coming up between the Thunder and Pacers. And the stars are out. Tyrese Halliburton. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the league MVP, trying to do the full sweep of those MVP awards. And Prize Picks is where you can go to win real money by cooking up some hot takes with your friends and building your fantasy team every day over there. And it's not just basketball. You got baseball going on right now as well. You have a really great slate of hockey action starting up tonight, I believe, as well. And you can mix and match these leagues, mix and match players from different sports. So that's the best part about Prize Picks, is you can turn your sports knowledge into cash with millions in awarded winnings and millions of members. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Do you know ball? There's only one series left in the playoffs, and the championship is officially on the line. That means time is running out for you to put your takes to the test on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. This year's basketball playoffs are headed toward crowning a first-time champ for the first time in 50 years. That's right. Indiana and Oklahoma City are going for their first championship ever. Seattle was able to win a championship, but they moved on down. So go over there, pick more or less on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and more for, again, a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. It's the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks, best way to win cash while watching sports. Millions of users over there, as I mentioned. You can mix and match player projections from different sports, combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. And they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And they put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. The app is really easy to use. Again, more or less on a few player stats, just 2 or more, and you have your team. You got Taco Tuesday with player projection discounts, usually 15 to 25%. And then you got the Flex Friday, so you can opt in and check the checkbox to have your lineup build to be eligible for that protected play. Choose squares from any game on the board. And if your lineup does not win, your net losses come back as promo funds. So go over there and download the app. Use CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. And, if I'm going to do one for tomorrow, I'm going more on Shea's points. He's been able to score 30 pretty much every night during this run here. And I'm going more on Halliburton's assists. I think that's the simplest one you can do in pretty much any of these games. Those two have been pretty consistent with what they've been putting out in those two categories these playoffs. So that's my recommendation, but come up with your own. And again, use the code CLNS. Let them know we sent you 50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So let's bring in Josue Pavon, live from Oklahoma City at the media day. What's up, Josue?
What's up, Bobby? What's going on, man? You pumped up for this or what?
Yes, sir. I know you are. So Josue's about to cover his third finals in 4 years. And you were pretty damn close 2023 when they blew it in Game 7.
Yeah, we were, man. Too bad Tatum got hurt, but it's unbelievable to think that they're not all Celtics, This last one, of course, OKC Thunder. And I'm sure, you being a basketball purist, I'm sure you're excited about these finals more than the casual NBA fan.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of that talk going on right now, and I don't think that bothers us who are ready to watch this thing and break it down and see whether the Pacers have a chance. The Thunder obviously going to be heavy favorites in this thing. I guess the biggest worry for them going into this series is not getting too overconfident that they drew a easier opponent here per se, and knowing that the Pacers have been down 20-30 in some of these games and come back and made it a real battle late or won many of those games, one of them in each series that completely swung the complexion of those series. They did it against Milwaukee to seal that one. They did it against the Cavs early on, and then they did it against the Knicks to start that series and flipped everything on its head there. So to me, how many times have the Thunder been up huge in games this year, Josue, where they just run away with these wins? You can't necessarily do that against the Pacers because they're capable of erasing 15, 20, 25-point leads. So that's what the Thunder really have to avoid in games 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a big part of how they win games, right? Especially during the regular season, especially in the second half. It seems like the third quarter was always that stretch where they often create separation. And all of a sudden, midway through the fourth, the stars are on the bench watching their team finish things out. And that was a big talking point going into the postseason, going up against, especially against the Denver Nuggets in that series where they blew a big lead in game 1. The fact that this team wasn't necessarily battle tested in that regard, going down to the wire or most of these games, because a lot of the times there were lopsided victories in favor of the Thunder, of course. But I think a lot of that in that series throughout the against the Nuggets, you know what I mean? Like being battle tested, obviously that loss, going down in a series, which is the only time that happened throughout these playoffs. And of course, we can't forget about what happened against the Memphis Grizzlies. Like there were games where, they obviously were on the wrong end of a blowout loss, but then again, or excuse me, not the blowout loss, the wrong end of a blowout. They were able to come back in that game, obviously a historic comeback, but it was a great reminder for these guys that, you can't fall that far behind thinking that you can come back. They do have some impressive comeback wins, but I don't think they necessarily harp on those situations. I think they like to learn from them. I think the way this team has always approached each game is looking within themselves. They rarely pay much attention to the outside noise. They really, get big on this historic run that they've been on. They've just literally been doing this, in my opinion, one game at a time, even one quarter at a time, these wins together. They never get too far ahead of themselves. But again, going up against a team like the Pacers, you wonder if we're going to see that again. See the Thunder blow a double-digit lead, never mind a 20-point lead, but just anywhere between a 10 to 15 points, because they have done that throughout this postseason, and it really wouldn't shock me if that happens again in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, that's the only path I can see the Pacers having to a win in this series is stealing a game or two like that and then having it be wide open for the taking, just like the Nuggets did to some degree. Aaron Gordon hit shots in a couple of those games late, changed what should have been losses into wins, and all of a sudden you're playing in a game 7 and Aaron Gordon goes down, so you get a break there. But who knows what would have happened to the Thunder if the Nuggets were fully loaded for that game. So that's what you want to avoid here if you're Oklahoma City. For the Pacers, like, I don't know. Who are they going to throw at Shea? Neesmith, maybe? That's what I'm thinking right now. You could maybe do Nembhard to start and set up some switching and stuff like that. They're going to do their press, which I'm interested to see how that works out. But they've been better defensively in these playoffs. They're up against it because the Thunder are comfortable playing at the high pace that the Pacers do. And statistically, I think they actually play faster than Indiana.
I think that's why this matchup is so intriguing, especially when it comes down to how they defend and transition, because that's going to play a big part in trying to slow down the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, those epic runs, those are inevitable. I mean, that's just going to happen. You can say the same thing about the Pacers, right? I mean, a lot of these games, even if they don't always translate into wins, you see them go on these impressive runs. And I just think the team that can minimize, the opposing team from being as comfortable as possible throughout these finals, it's going to be huge, especially in game 1. The way each team sets the tone in this series is going to be interesting, because I think a lot of, like you said, Bobby, I mean, their offense can obviously keep up with the Thunder. They can score in big ways. I don't think that's a concern if you're going into the series, if you're the Pacers. But how they defend, I think will be interesting. I do think we'll see a lot of Nembhard on SGA. I think the history between those two is going to play a part in that. And I think Carlisle, has to observe that and think, what Andrew can do living up to that situation, to that moment. I mean, these two have been battling each other since they were like 9 years old, back in Canada. So for them to both reach the NBA Finals is obviously an incredible story, incredible journey. But you want to see those two go at it as much as possible if you're Carlisle. Feel that out, especially in game 1. And then, of course, I think Neesmith would be the other guy that spends a lot of time on trying to slow down SGA. Sorry, there's a lot of noise going on, man. This group of reporters just came in. They just came in with Jared McCain, who's been doing his corresponding thing. They do that every year. They pick a rookie to go and cover the NBA Finals. And it's funny because 3 years ago, Bobby, it was Jalen Williams who did it. He talked about that a little bit today as well, and how the last few years have just been a blur. But between
I remember
his
that
rookie season, remember that? Yeah, I remember that too. I remember thinking, man, this is someone that could be, a big part of what the Thunder are trying to do, in their future. But I'll be lying if I told you that I thought he'd be an all-star. He was 2 years away from being an all-star.
All NBA.
That's what happened. All NBA, all defensive. I mean, all that happened this season. And it's been such a blur for him, he says. And I think a lot of that has to do with what I was saying earlier, just about how this team is just always so hyper-focused on team results, getting over the hump, doing it obviously one season at a time, winning the Western Conference last year, but then to do it this year the way they did it at a historic rate. I still think these guys want to just like stop and look back into all the accomplishments they pulled off, because they know the ultimate goal is right in front of them. So I do believe Jalen when he says, he hasn't taken the time to really just let it all sink in. I think he's just really in the moment right now. And can't believe he's less than 24 hours away from playing in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and so media day going on down there still. Is everyone talked at this point? Is that a wrap for the interviews?
Yeah, they wrapped the interview. Pacers just wrapped up the practice. The Thunder practiced early this morning, so we were able to get in here the last half hour and then go right into the pressers. But yeah, man, you know how it goes, Bobby. At this point, I mean, a lot of players and the coaches have said a lot of the same things that we've heard throughout the last couple of days. Everyone's just waiting to play at this point. But I did get a Lemonster question from Mark Dagnall, man. People obviously out here, or maybe they remember, but me from being from Boston, I had to ask him to go from Lemonster, a kid from Lemonster playing in his driveway, to the coaching in the NBA Finals. It's unbelievable, you know what I mean? Like for a small town guy like Mark Dagnall. But of course, he made it about the team. He's like, man, this is an unbelievable moment for all of us, from the coaching staff to the players. We all have that love and appreciation for basketball, and we've all, from one stage or another, have done the whole driveway thing, which is true. Whether you're in the staff, whether you're a player or a coach, you grew up loving this sport if you're here. So obviously it means a lot to everyone to be at the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and I got it here. I was watching on the NBA TV or wherever the hell they were broadcasting this thing.
Are you watching the Lemonster? You got my Lemonster question in there?
I got the Lemonster thing when I was watching, catching some of the interviews earlier. So let's see. I got it here. Here we go.
I wish I asked him if he had any people from back in the day reach out to him. But yeah.
Let's see. Hold on, I thought I had it here. We'll play in a second, but take me through the sights and sounds today. You mentioned that the Lemonster stuff. You got, I'm sure, some of the stars talking, today as well, and a lot of the same stuff you mentioned. But there's a lot of cool storylines here. I was texting you earlier, like Horford was a big part of this Thunder development the year he spent there. I thought that was an awesome story. I've checked in on a couple times with the Thunder whenever they've been around. SGA played with them. Lou Dort played with them. Daigneault coached them that year. And I believe that was Daigneault's first season as head coach out there. So I love that one. You got Neesmith out there doing his thing. One of the craziest comebacks in NBA history. He was right in the middle of to set up this finals run. Now he's, starting on an NBA finals team in Indiana. You mentioned the Daigneault stuff. You got two teams that traded Paul George to set up what they're doing now. Pacers got Sabonis back, traded him for Halliburton eventually. The Thunder.
How are you feeling if you're Paul George, man, about to watch the finals, being like,
I know, especially after the season he had.
And these two teams meeting, like, I played a big part in this. Like, do you feel good about that, or do you feel like, oh man, maybe I wish things went differently? I don't know. Must be conflicted.
Yeah, and he's tapped into that kind of stuff. He's a media guy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's been a tough year for him. But what was some of the, other than the one you mentioned there, some of the sights and sounds today? You said it was a lighter crowd than usual too. I'm sure, given the two beats we're talking about here, two cities we're talking about media-wise.
Yeah. Compared to last year, I felt like it was like maybe almost double of the media members last year at TD Garden. But the stuff the Thunder have been saying, the last few days, same thing. And then of course the ties to a lot of these Canadian born players that are in the finals. I thought what SGA said about Steve Nash was really interesting. How he's really kept a close eye, or he's really tried to help a lot of the younger guys coming up, and how 2 weeks, spending 2 weeks with Steve Nash and just a lot of the guys that he played with growing up, played a big part in why he's here. He said, so I thought that was really cool. Called Nash sort of like the pioneer, a big reason why a lot of these guys are here. He says, not only from a motivational standpoint, but just from what he was able to do coming up through the AAU circuit, and how Steve Nash played a big part in a lot of these Canadians coming up, and how the national team and a lot of these guys are it's kind of like a tremendous stepping stone for guys back home watching. So I thought that was pretty cool. Between Nembhard, obviously Lou Dort, SGA. The fact that SGA, Lou Dort, Kenrich Williams, and I want to say Aaron Wiggins, that was his rookie year. Those are the 4 players that's still on the team from that roster, or those back-to-back years where the Thunder won 24 and 25 games. I think that's just really cool when you look back on that, because the Pacers obviously were in a similar boat in the sense of just winning like 24, 25 games, and then you fast forward 3 years later, and all of a sudden you're in the NBA Finals. I mean, I just think a lot of what these two respective organizations had to go through, or at least the steps that they took in the last few years, when you don't really know if this is going to be that year, says a lot in the terms of the direction that the NBA is going in. Like, it's so less about putting star players together. And I don't know, Bobby, a lot of this you already know, but like the Big Three era and all that stuff, like it's so in the rear view at this point. But at the same time, like the years it takes to get here can be 3 years, or it could be 5, it could be 7. I mean, obviously a lot has to go in your way. A lot has to go in your favor leading up to that. But it's interesting to see how fast it can happen, and especially when you're talking about the youngest team in the NBA. Like it's super interesting how this team was put together. But when you look at a team like the Pacers that came out, the way they did, I can't wait to see what that looks like on the biggest stage. Halliburton looks like on the biggest stage, or Pascal Siakam, who obviously done it before, what he looks like in his second go around. So there's just a lot of interesting storylines that are going to play out, and I just feel like going into it, you have two teams that have a lot to prove, and they have the utmost confidence. I mean, yes, like you said at the top, the Thunder are favored to win this, big favorites, but like that really drives a team like the Pacers, like just a team that's been overlooked, essentially every series throughout these playoffs, even in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, there's a lot of people who are predicting the New York Knicks, and I just think all of that plays a big part in going into this, especially in game one, man. It could be a really, really good one of the better games we see throughout these finals.
And game one has meant a lot in some of these finals we've watched, especially the shorter ones. Team slips up. That's what the Thunder did, early in that series in 2012 with KD, Russ, and Harden. They lost that game with the controversial call at the end. KD on the baseline there, I think, got fouled and they didn't call it or something like that. And that sent the series drastically in the Heat's direction. And I think the Thunder were favored in that, if I remember correctly. It was a while ago now, but that was Oklahoma City's last chance to get this thing done. And they weren't promised one after that. And similar with the Celtics now. They got it done last year. You see it completely crumbled at the end of this season. And now who knows when the Celtics are going to be contending for championships again. So as great as this window looks for the Thunder here, you got to get this one. There's a golden opportunity for them. And we'll get to a prediction here from Josue in just a second.
Just real quick, though, but I also want to mention, you look back at just the last time this team was here and what happened after that, right? I mean,
they traded hard in that fall.
Right. Well, that time too. But no, I'm thinking about the other time when you were up against the Warriors. You were so close, and then all of a sudden, the following off season.
Mm-hmm.
Durant goes to the Golden State. I mean, I just feel like that's kind of been like the underlying. That's kind of been like the elephant in the room when you think about like the fan base and just what they've gone through in the past, near decade or so. Like it's just like, again, you never know how fast the turnaround is going to be, but also like it really makes the average fan here truly appreciate this team and what they've been able to do. And seemingly, like on the low, it feels like people were talking about the Thunder this season, but were people really talking about them? You know what I mean? Like I feel like what SGA's doing and the MVP season that he put together, like it really took people a while to sort of kind of give him his due, I feel like. And even then it's sort of like, you got the free throw merch and stuff, but also it's kind of like no one's gonna just give him the face of the league talk. And I know some people hate that whole narrative, but I just think it's interesting how he's really had to earn it, and I think that continues on, into the finals for sure, if he's able to pull this thing off. But yeah, man, I just think, again, when you look back at just the way how close they were and how everything changed and how this is sort of that second mountain, as Sam Presti calls it, with the first being that Harden and Durant and that era, it's unbelievable how fast things turned around.
And we do have the sound now. Here's Josue earlier today talking to Mark Daigneault.
Coach, I know you spent over a decade in Oklahoma City, but from a kid from Leominster, Massachusetts to the NBA Finals, how surreal is it, coming from all the way from Leominster to here to the finals?
It's awesome. It's awesome for everybody. There's every single person that's participating in this, whether it's coaches, players, staff. There was a time in their life when this was just a dream. This wasn't a foregone conclusion for them. And that's every player that's participating. There's a time where they were in their driveway shooting 1-on-0 with a basket, counting down the end of a game. And so that's what makes it so special to participate in. That's why it's such a great opportunity for everybody. We're all very humbled and grateful to be a part of it.
So there you go. Josue on the scene.
Yeah, man. It's unbelievable. This thing happened fast, Bobby. But it should be a good one, man. It's too bad that things didn't pan out the way we anticipated.
I know.
I told you I ran into what we thought, man. It's too bad because looking back on it, at full strength, when both teams are healthy, those are the best two teams in the NBA, man. Celtics and Thunder. We all thought that's what we were going to see. I ran into Bontemps a couple hours ago. He's just like, man, I thought you'd be heading to Boston, man. I thought we'd all be there,
Oh, he must be pissed. It's Indiana and OKC.
I know. I didn't want to get into it, but you know how he feels. I should.
I'm sure a lot of media feel that way, but not too many people care about that. It's all good. Oklahoma City, there's already some spots there. Indiana, man, when you get out there, I got to send you my cafe that I love. I'm not going to shout them out on the air. But,
put me on.
Yeah, that's a great one out there. A couple of times we've been out there. We did All-Star out there. You were there for the playoffs, East Finals last year, so you're pretty familiar with Indiana, so you're ready for all that. But it's going to start in Oklahoma City here, and that's a reason, along with the defense, Shea's ability to draw fouls, the lineup flexibility that the Thunder have, and again, just the fact that they've been that dominant team all year. I think it's going to be tougher than many think, and the Vegas odd going into this thing was just ridiculous to start it off. How heavy of a favorite they considered the Thunder. I don't think it's that lopsided of a series. I think the Pacers do a lot of stuff that's going to bother the Thunder a little bit. And I've disrespected the Pacers in a lot of these series. Like, I probably should have given them more of a consideration against the Cavs. I definitely should have given them a bigger shot against the Knicks than I did. So I'm going to give them a little bit of a shot in this series. I'm still going Thunder because I feel like they've been that team all year. I think all the signs have said they're going to win this thing. And this is a good matchup for them, more or less. But I'm going to say 6 games. I think we get a 6-game series here. I think we do get a bit of a battle, a couple of Pacers comebacks that make the Thunder sweat here. The Pacers have just been that team all year. And Siakam's a big factor, too. That's going to be a handful for Oklahoma City to deal with against some of their smalls there. So Rick Carlisle is a great coach. He's been in this thing a while. He's made some great adjustments in these playoffs, game plans, funneling in one play after another. But that's another thing that the Thunder have an answer for, Josue, is they have a ton of players that they can go to, too, for fresh legs and quality minutes here. So, yeah, I'm going Thunder in 6.
Okay. All right. You think I'm going back to Indy? Could be. I mean, look, my prediction, it's not crazy, but I just feel like it's not going to be as lopsided as it looks. Right? I had Thunder in 5, but
that's
I don't think it's
probably
gonna be
the more fair one.
Right. But also, with that being said, I don't think it's going to be, I don't know, Bob. Maybe we get a blowout, but
There'll be
blowouts. One,
there'll be a couple Thunder
that's what I'm
blowouts.
thinking. I think there'll be a couple blowouts, but other than that, I just think you see really just tightly contested games, especially when it comes down to the fourth quarter. And I think that's where the Thunder are going to create their separation. To be honest, I don't think it'll be much of the third quarter like we've seen throughout these playoffs. I think it's when SGA is in his bag. It's a 2-possession game, and all of a sudden he's putting, you know what I mean? He's putting the game away. I think we will see that, especially in the fourth quarter. I think that plays a part. For sure. I'm expecting that big Aaron Wiggins games that hasn't happened throughout these playoffs. I think it's going to happen in this series. Guys like that, Isaiah Joe can really get going off the bench. He's also been relatively quiet. I just feel like when it comes to this Thunder team, that's what really has been separated them from the rest. Jalen Williams asked today, when did he know that this team really truly something special? And he said mid-season, when they essentially didn't have a center for, a week or two, between Chet going down, Isaiah Hartenstein, who didn't start the season, healthy. So, and the other Jalen Williams was out as well. Those are the 3 centers. And it was J-Dub, the all-star Jalen Williams, who had to play a lot of center. And he just felt like the depth and the way they were able to respond and still put together wins, just not only show the depth of the team, but also just how stronger they were when they got those sets back, and how the defense really stepped up, and how that catapulted a impressive run. To see these guys finish out with that. When Chet Holmgren came back, they only lost 4 games throughout that stretch. From when he came back to the end of the regular season. So it's just really impressive. But also, I just think the way this team closes out games, and again, because of what happened against the Denver Nuggets, I think they really learned a lot about themselves when it comes to those moments. And Alex Caruso coming up big in these playoff moments, doing things that don't always show up on the box score. So I just think, again, the depth really plays a big part in this series. The Pacers do have guys that can contribute off the bench, but I just think that the Thunder, when you combine the depth and their defense, it's just too much for the Pacers in this series. So that's why I got the Thunder in 5. But again, it's going to be a really, really fun series, really entertaining series, and I can't wait for it to all unfold, man.
So I got Thunder in 6. Josue's got them in 5. I think everyone's looking at this and saying the Thunder probably have a little too much for Indiana here, but if Indiana pulls it off after what they've done so far, I don't think anyone would be absolutely stunned. It would just take a couple crazy swings in these games. I think that the Thunder are probably going to be prepared for it, or at least able to sustain once, maybe twice. If they blow 2 leads here, that's going to be trouble, because that's what the Celtics did against the Knicks. That changed that series. That's what the Knicks did against the Pacers, and that flipped that series as well. So they cannot do it twice. It's probably going to happen once here. As you said, if Thunder win in 5, they're slipping up in one of those games, but they can't allow it to happen twice. So this thing's going to get dangerous here. I want to get your thoughts too, Josue. We just talked to Rob. There's definitely some changes coming up for the Celtics this offseason, and They'll probably start right when these finals end. We saw Austin Ainge head out to Utah this week after a long career in Boston, and that front office takes a hit there. Now some players probably going to be heading out the door as well. We debated Porzingis. We debated Holiday. Obviously, Tatum's going to be out this year as well. The big question is, do you go all out to compete? Do you really try to stay in contention next year, even though Tatum's going to be out for most, if not all of the year? Or do you take a step back, try to see what you can get for some of these guys and reload for that next great Celtics team here? Which way would you be leaning?
I'll go all of the above, Bobby, if I'm being honest. I just think
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, especially when you look at the situation between Porzingis and Holiday. Like, I feel like you have to show. I feel like you have to. I don't want to use the word showcase, but I feel like you have to, give teams a reason to put something on the table for guys like that. You know what I mean? Not to say that they're too old to contribute, but I just think we look at the health and the injuries and the concerns that the hurdles, I should say, that they went through last season. What's gonna motivate a team to want to sign up for those kind of problems or potential issues? I just think when it comes down to it, though, because of how much talent this team has, and because I'm not one of those guys that feels like because of Tatum's injury you have to run out and trade Jaylen Brown. You sort of have to see how things come together.
Yeah, bring a team into the year, see how it goes.
Right, and kind of just go from there. However, wouldn't surprise me if you see drastic changes from the roster from when the season started to the very end. That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But in the Eastern Conference, I still think you can remain competitive. Are you a championship contender? Probably not. But I would love to see these reps for Jaylen Brown, to be honest with you, Bobby. I just feel like this would be a great opportunity for him to not only be the number one guy, but really show it or find out what that feels like. You know what I mean? Especially when the stakes aren't as high or people aren't expecting you to get back to the finals. I think someone like Jaylen thrives on that, So I would love to see what that looks like. Again, I don't think you run out and trade Jaylen. I just don't. Nor do I feel like Jalen's going to retire a Celtic. I mean, if we're having that conversation, but I just think this is that situation where you just don't want to completely tear it down. But then when Tatum comes back, then what? You know what I mean? Like, we don't know what Tatum's going to look like. We're not quite sure how long it's going to take him to return to the guy that he was, which I do think is still possible considering he, isn't anywhere near 30. And I think that plays a big part when you're coming back from an Achilles injury. Durant being the best example, who was, well over 30 when that happened. So there is that promise that Tatum will revert to the player that he once was. But how long does that take? It's going to take some time.
Take a while. 15
right,
months,
but at the same time, you don't take for the lottery, man. You come a long way to get to this point. And yeah, I think Jaylen is excited and locked in for that kind of opportunity. So why not let it unfold? But again, the other parts are up for grabs. You have to see what's out there. You have to do your due diligence. Even someone like Derek White, who I would love to see, stay in Boston. You have to see what his price tag is like, and just kind of go from there and see, the same thing for everyone else. But in terms of just trading everyone before the season, you don't necessarily have to do that. But you can start making those steps. Maybe with someone like Jrue Holiday, you never know. It wouldn't surprise me, like you said, if right after the finals we see that first shoe drop.
Yeah, and then obviously Al and Luke are free agents. Going to be some tough decisions there as well.
Right.
I don't know, man. Could Al leave again? It's stunning to think about, but everything changed in Boston.
I read somewhere New York should try to sign him. I'm like, can you imagine?
I saw Bontemps voted that. I don't think he was
jersey?
reporting
That was
it,
Bontemps, right? I think that was yeah.
That would be stunning. That would be like Philly all over again.
But then again, it's like at this stage of his career, you just want to put him on ice for a season and then bring him back.
That's what I'm thinking too. Would he take a year off maybe here as well? I know he's considering everything right now. So
or even have one of those seasons where you don't play him as much, and he's just kind of like
takes
one game off, something like that.
They do need some guys who have been here to get them through next year because it's going to be a challenging season. I think that's a big reason you take Jaylen back, rely on him for next year. If you can get back Luke or Al, one of those two guys, I think that's important too. And just try to sustain this thing as much as you can. Again, if it goes completely sideways next year, like it did for the Warriors after Clay tore his ACL that year in the finals, I think then you look at offloading many more pieces and doing a full dive below the luxury tax and all that stuff here. But I think we're in
Yeah.
agreement in what we want to see here, Josue. So it'll be
And start
interesting. It'll
Pritchard.
start.
I
Yeah,
want to see
I think it's
Pritchard.
time for that.
Yeah, let him get those reps in. And who knows, man? Maybe he knocks on the All-Star door. You know, who knows? That's how it starts, right? Get a couple votes. Maybe you don't make the team. but
Noah's
you're on
ready
the
to make the prediction. We talked about it last night.
Oh yeah, no, Noah had to do that last season, so that's kind of a flex for her. Remember that? I think that was
Yeah.
last year, right? She was like,
Right. This is
all-star
a real
potential.
chance for him to get it. So we'll
Absolutely.
keep an eye on everything going on here. Josue Pavon's got an eye on the finals. They start tomorrow at 8:30 on ABC. Pacers, Thunder, Game 1. He'll have all the coverage over on Clutch Points. We'll touch base with him here at some point later in the series, or after it's done, if it's a short one. And he might be seeing another
Absolutely.
championship out there in OKC. And I mentioned our prize picks read, Josue. One of these teams is going to get their first championship ever.
It's unbelievable, man. And I'm really glad that that's the narrative, because I was afraid they're going to try to tie in Sonic's history with these guys. Like, no, man, separate them. Like, this is a completely different franchise. And I think that's a big part of it. You know, what is this? Year 15? You know, like, they're so young, but at the same time, they got here in a hurry, man. And these fans are here for it, man. Like, this place is going to be rocking tomorrow. And I can't wait for it.
Oh, my God.
Man.
I can't even
I cannot
imagine.
wait.
Yeah, that trip out there was really cool to see what it was like crowd-wise, and that might be the loudest crowd in the NBA at least. 17 years for the Thunder now. They might get their first
17,
championship this spring. So, again, Josue's got all the coverage. Check out Prize Picks. Show them some love, our sponsor this week. And always here on the Garden Report, CLNS. Play $5, get 50 instantly. Go take Shea and all the other stars who are going to be doing their thing in this series for more on their points, less on their assists, whatever you want to go with there. Whoever you're feeling good about, again, use the code CLNS to check that out. And again, Game 1's tomorrow, 8:30. We have a special interview coming up tomorrow, Josue. Can you guess who's coming on the Garden Report?
Who you got?
Baylor Shireman is checking in after his rookie year.
Wow.
Gonna see how he's doing out there in Nebraska. He's another guy who's potentially stepping into a bigger role next year. So looking forward to see what he's been working on, and he'll be playing in the summer league as well in July. So you'll see him again soon. But yeah, he's going to join John, Noah, and I tomorrow. So stay tuned for that when it comes out tomorrow night.
That's what's up, man. Yo, big shout out to a lot of these people tuning in right now, man. I just put the comments section like 5 minutes ago.
A lot of love for Josue.
Yeah, you guys cracking me up. Thank you, man. Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt you, but when I was smiling earlier, I think it was like 5-6 minutes ago. I just saw these messages, man. I appreciate you guys, man. It's weird you guys aren't here, man. I had it set in stone in my head. I was like, man, Celtics, Thunder, let's go, NBA Finals. But of course, basketball gods had other plans. But
I know you've been working away,
appreciate
man. We've been done for 3 weeks, just chilling, playing some basketball, doing some shows. So we're well in the off-season mode, which is insane to think about. I still can't believe how that Knicks series went down. And then they went and fired Tibbs.
Yo, that was crazy, man. Can we talk about that real quick, just before you get up, before you wrap this thing up? I mean, he's talking about how big of an offseason it is. I remember this was like 24 hours before, and I'm like, are you sure you're gonna be there, my guy? But at the same time, man, if you're Tibbs, you're like, the goal was to beat the Celtics. Like, we beat the Celtics. Like, okay, we didn't get to the finals, but what was the narrative going into the playoffs? If they don't get to the Eastern Conference Finals, or at least quote unquote meet the Celtics, then he's fired. Okay, fair. He beat them. He beat the champions. Like,
ginormous upset. Yeah,
at least one more year. I would be like, let's just run this back one more time. But then again, you never know, Bobby. Maybe there really is some wholesome changes coming down the pike, for New York. So I don't know. I was a little surprised.
Looks like it's going to be their old assistant, Johnny Bryant, coming back in there. Suns hired Jordan Ott today from Cleveland. So I think we'll probably hear about that one soon. But yeah, this was tough. You could have seen it coming. You knew there was some dissension there and that they didn't love his coaching style, and it didn't totally
you think it was the minutes
team.
thing? I feel like it's the minute overload. That was a big part of it.
That's what Bridges mentioned at one point during the year, and then Hart went to the bench, and there was a lot going on there. Clearly, Brunson seemed to like him. He and Towns have had a weird relationship going way back.
Brunson copped that attitude with someone asking about his future, or not his future, but his future, and he was just like, you know what I mean? Like, how dare you insinuate that? And then days later, he's fired.
Look what happens. Yeah. So that was a crazy one yesterday. But We hit on that yesterday as well. Did a look back at our predictions. If you want to go check out that show, you can as well. And again, we'll be back tomorrow with Baylor Shireman here on the Garden Report. Thanks to Josue for stopping by. If you missed it earlier, we talked to Brian Robb about a bunch of Porzingis trades, bunch of holiday trades, and media day in the books out there in Oklahoma City, and we get the finals starting tomorrow. That's it for us here. We will talk to you tomorrow here. Subscribe, CLNS Media, and Celtics All Access.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way?
Let's fly out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke